Thank you for having me from the rainy UK. I'm sure it's really nice and lovely in Greece. Um, so my presentation today is about the development of degree apprenticeships in the UK. I've worked in a couple of institutions and I have experience of the different ways degree apprenticeships have been developed. And hopefully with this presentation, I can address and evaluate a bit the skills gap we've got in the cybersecurity area and how universities can work together with the employers and develop a new set of degrees. So I will focusing on the skills gap, the development of degree apprenticeships, some challenges through the development of those degrees, some recommendations that came out as an event and as some findings we have had, and of course some future work because it's still at very early stages of the development. So it is very well known, the research recently has shown that there's still a huge gap when it comes to cybersecurity. The pandemic has demonstrated how high need there is for any professional in the IT industry to understand the need for those cyber skills, and how can we identify further those institutional changes and how we can address them either within the organization or within academia. So I do have some examples there of when they presented the skills gap. So some useful information can be found in the skills mismatch index, where it was indicated that the Eurozone alone by 2020 would experience 900,000 shortage of professionals in STEM. So even looking at that particular field, we see that already, despite the fact we've got more 18-year-olds going into the university, we still have a huge gap in that field. And there's been new research being published in 2019, and it evidences that these figures are set to get worse, and it revealed that it could be 7 million underskilled or their job required some upskilling. And of course, with the pandemic hitting, which was really unforeseen circumstances, this hasn't changed, and it's actually identified greater gaps we've got within cybersecurity. So in 2015, in the UK, the government started funding universities to start developing bachelor's degrees that they would have the format of the apprenticeships. And for the international colleagues who are on the call today, the apprenticeships is another vocational route into achieving a degree in a defined area, in a defined discipline. So the government started implementing various schemes where the employer would collaborate with academia, and they would have a chance to either attract new talent or upskill existing talent they have had in their organizations. And that would be a very different route into a traditional university study where you would go for 3-4 years, get your degree, and then go and find a graduate job. So it's a new model, and it was bringing together the best of what higher education can offer and what vocational education can offer. So for the UK terms, that would be colleges, BTECs, HNDs, and they have been co-designed between employers and higher education institutions. So we had a set of trailblazers, we had a set of universities where they sat together and they defined the degree apprenticeship standards. So it has been a very powerful combination of knowing how to do something. It's not just the theory behind it, but also how you practically address those skills and how you can impact within your organization, how you can really benefit the future of the IT industry. And the whole apprenticeships model was developed in such a way that would benefit both the employees, the students, and academia. It was a very flexible model, and it's still undergoing various changes depending on the institution that is running those degrees. Now, behind everything that is coming from the employers and the trailblazers and the skills gap and what we actually need, when we try to develop any higher education degree, and I believe this is kind of the same across the global, not just the UK, employability is a key theme within any curriculum that's being developed. So whilst we've been developing the degree apprenticeships across universities, we used the Advanced AG framework on how we can embed employability within a course. And it's not just about providing a theoretical framework of any topic, but actually going into details and understanding the experience that those students will have to gain through the degree, the reflection, the articulation, things about career guidance and management, behavior, qualities and values, and all that would define, even within an apprenticeship, what employability is. And it was really interesting to see that we were already trying to do this within a traditional bachelor's degree. Then the apprenticeships came on board. From the start, employers, quite often they would think that, well, you're doing an apprenticeship, so employability is a given. But when you put those things together, the academic work with the practical work, how can you really define employability? How can those apprentices gain lifelong learning? And upon graduating, it's not just about keeping their job, but creating a future for their career. And especially with the skills gap we've got in cyber, how can those graduates from those degrees carry on being upskilled continuously in the cyber field? So the apprenticeships primarily, they were targeting 18 to 19-year-olds. Because as I said at the beginning of the presentation, there's a huge skills gap within STEM, but then gradually companies, employers identified now there's also a high need to upskill their existing staff. So gradually, when we were trying to approach employers and show them the need to get their staff enrolled on those degrees, it was really highlighted and very well welcomed that it could really uplift the nature of their organization. Their staff who've been there for 10, 15, even 20 years could go back and have another chance into learning, into adapting, into upskilling and understanding the needs of the new era. So the qualification could be suitable for anyone as long as they had a job. And through the degree apprenticeships, it's expected to strengthen that vocational pathway. So it's moving away from that traditional theoretical framework that a traditional bachelor's degree would have. So it does offer a much more flexibility and a different approach into entering academia. So to demonstrate the differences, on the top you can see the traditional bachelor's degree. In the UK, normally it's 3 years of taught elements. So year 1 and year 2, they carry 120 credits. And then we strongly advise the students in year 3 to take a year-long placement. It is optional most of the times. Some students will take up the opportunity. Some other students will just carry on with the final year of their degree. And at the bottom of that table, you can see the differences with the degree apprenticeships. So those students will have a day job. They will still have to complete 120 credits per year. They don't need to go out for a placement, but they have more flexibility and a bit longer time to complete their degree because their work experience basically is taking place alongside their work, their studies. So each year that they're doing their degree, we expect that 20% of their daily job will be spent on their academic learning. They will be part of the student population. They will have the same student experiences. They will meet with their academics. They will have face-to-face, of course, pre-COVID sessions, and actually experience similar sessions that the traditional bachelor's degree students would have. So these are the main differences of how the two programs differ. So the presentation is about how can we embed those professional skills. Now the difference with apprenticeships quite often is that it's very much driven by the employers. So what we faced over the years was developing those apprenticeships is that the employers would have a say. Sometimes, they would have very strong views about what needs to be taught. And then we've got so many different certifications out there, and not just in cyber, but in every area, but mainly in cyber, so many certifications. You have GCHQ, you have NCSC these days. So you've got CompTIA. So what exactly certification should that student go for? So we took a bit more broad approach, and we started looking at the SOFIA framework, which is the skills framework for the information age, which is a bit more generic, and it can be applied on various degrees and courses. And then we've got the Chartered Institute of IT, and at the time we had IISP, which is now the Chartered Institute of Information Security Professionals. So by looking at all those professional skills, we, instead of looking at specific certifications, we try to embed the generic skills that a student should gain through the degree. And that kind of brought all the employers on the same page. And it also brought academia into a more collaborative development and understanding between the employers and what higher education can offer in setting up those degrees of the future. And it's not about just today, what certification is needed today. It's about how do we develop those skills that will last, and those graduates will remain lifelong learners and employable. So as we gained more and more experience of running those degree apprenticeships, and as I moved organizations and also different approaches in leading those degree apprenticeship courses, we kind of tried to break it down into different sections, because this is a triad. So you've got the university, you've got the employers, but you also have the apprentices who have views, they've got needs, and they also have career plans, which sometimes is very different to having an undergraduate student on a bachelor's degree who are still trying to find their feet. The apprentices, the students who are doing a degree apprenticeship, they are already part of the workforce. So they can already make decisions and decide where they want to go in 5-10 years time. So we broke it down into those three main players: the universities, employers, and the apprentices. And we are making recommendations in terms of how can you be strategic in developing those degrees if you're a university, how to understand the needs of CPD, and how as an organization you can develop your CPD strategy. And then if you're an apprentice, how do you manage your work and your education at the same time? Under the collaborative approach issue, as a university, we should understand that the employer should be part of the planning of that degree, that curriculum, the assessment pattern from very early on. And that's very interesting. And so this is what has been causing some issues sometimes, because there's so many different employers, so many different needs. How do you bring them on the same page? How do you get a generic understanding of what each player needs? So the employers then will have to work collaboratively, not between themselves only, but also with higher education institutions as well. And then start developing those collaborative approaches if you're an apprentice with your line managers and your academics. So it is about triangulation. It is about how to empower those relationships. CPD is extremely important, as you can see further down the table. Is about reconsidering and redefining sometimes how you do delivery, what CPD activities you need, and of course, how do you do your outreach, and how do you continuously integrate those professional skills and develop lifelong learning within academia, but also the employers as well. So as I said at the beginning, this is the start of a much larger project. We are looking to start examining the impact that degree apprenticeships are having across institutions. The government keeps identifying and redefining and redesigning standards at the moment. So we're all going mad to understand what kind of new degrees and new areas we need to develop. The global pandemic has caused various issues, but at the same time, gave us time to reflect back and identify other areas that we need to focus on, and how cyber and information security is changing, and how else can we deliver those skills to the students. The employee expectations have been changing quite a lot. It depends if you are an SME or if you're a larger organization, and what is actually the staff involvement. You know, how are the academics ready to deliver such a degree these days when they're very used to the traditional higher education expectations. There are timetable constraints because those students are having daily jobs, and of course, what would be the ideal location for the educational establishment? What if the student cannot travel from far away, and then we'd create clusters of universities offering the apprenticeships, or should we start offering more of that online? So as a conclusion, the skills gap within cyber especially is still present and ongoing. It's not being foreseen that it's going to change. So we need to actually spend more time to understand the areas in more detail that are going to change, and be more prepared next time that we're hit either by a pandemic or something else. Teaching and learning and higher education is currently being redefined, and this is where we need to work with the employers, not just in isolation and then go and say, well, this is what we can offer you, but there needs to be more collaboration between employers and academia. There's a rapid move towards online and distance learning all of a sudden, and again, we need to take time to reflect on that. It is something that has been around for a long time, but how do we actually start implementing it and offering it to the students as an opportunity rather than to be seen as a plan B because we can't do otherwise? Cyber is becoming increasingly a mandatory skill to have, no matter what you study, no matter what kind of job you do, especially in the IT field. It is becoming increasingly needed, and accreditations are flourishing, and both institutions and employees are called to identify the importance of each one of them. Thank you very much. If there is any questions.